Mark Burgess joins us from our Brisbane studio. Mark Burgess, appreciate your time this afternoon. Look, just to start with, talk to us about this this deal with Lockheed Martin. How significant for Quickstep?
It's a very significant deal for Quickstep. We've been producing wing flaps for Lockheed Martin for the C-130J, and more recently we announced that we will also be supplying those same parts for the LM-100J, the civil variant. It's a 5-year deal. And we expect that to continue on for the foreseeable future as that aircraft's in service. It's a significant part of our business, about 50% of revenue last year, although that will diminish as our revenue increases associated with the Joint Strike Fighter program, also with Lockheed, but through Northrop Grumman and BAE Systems and Morand.
And how sort of a competitive process is it? I mean, I imagine you're tendering and going up against other global companies in this market.
It's a very intensely competitive market. We won that business with Lockheed on the C-130J on a competitive basis with other competitors from around the world. But I'm pleased to say that here in Australia we are able to be globally competitive, and we were able to win that contract and others on a competitive baseline.
And what is it that gives you the edge? I mean, I hear a lot about specific technology that you're able to offer. Just talk to us about what you bring to the table.
So we've got a very capable workforce at our Bankstown facility in Western Sydney. We've also got a significant R&D centre in Geelong, and we can bring a lot of intellectual horsepower to both the design development phase on the technology as well as on the manufacturing side. So the combination of a very skilled, diligent workforce with a lot of engineering capability around that allow us to bid for and win on a competitive basis many of these programs with international prime contractors.
It's interesting, the successes that Quickstep is finding, because it's set against the backdrop of a broader conversation in Australia about commercialising technologies, commercialising innovation and ideas, not being the country not being short on that, but actually being able to get it to market. I mean, how have you found it since you've joined Quickstep, the broader space, but in particular where you guys fit into it and the successes that you've found through it?
Well, and that rapid commercialisation of technology is the holy grail for manufacturing businesses. I've now been enrolled for 3 months, and what I've found is that we have a huge wealth of technology and technical capability. We have struggled at times to commercialise that technology quickly, but we've been able to do so in many respects, and we've now developed a very strong manufacturing dimension to the business. I expect that to continue significantly, but that rapid commercialisation is going to be a keynote element of our strategy going forward.
And that manufacturing side, is that here? Is that domestically located?
Currently, all of our production is either done out of the Bankstown facility in New South Wales or from Geelong. As we move into the commercial aerospace domain, it's likely that we will produce offshore, particularly in Southeast Asia, some of the less complex parts, and specialise where our real capability lies in terms of design, development and complex integration work here in Australia.
And the more basic manufacturing being offshore, is that largely due to the cost differential between here and offshore?
It is largely. In composite manufacturing, there's a significant degree of labour content, and therefore for the less sophisticated, more commoditised parts, offshore manufacturing has to be a factor within your supply chain. And it's driven the labour cost.
And look, you mentioned that being in the role a few months now. I believe part of it when you came in was a strategy review and update. I mean, the idea of basing manufacturing, was that a part of that? And what else has come out of that review and update that you've conducted?
Well, there were several things. A much greater focus on the aerospace segment, defence and commercial aerospace. A much greater focus on the R&D expenditure that we invest. So you mentioned it earlier about the commercialisation of technology. So we have seen a modest reduction in our R&D spend, but it will still retain levels of about 5% of sales going forward, but being much more diligent in the projects that we invest in and having a very clear path to commercialising those technologies to satisfy specific customer problems, to solve their needs.
What was the motivation and I suppose the reasoning behind that greater focus on that defence and aerospace market? I mean, just talk to us about that market and the opportunity that you see in it.
Well, 2/3 of the carbon composites produced in the world today are destined for the aerospace market, defence and commercial. The compounded annual growth rate in that market is about 10%, so it's an attractive market and it's growing at a healthy clip. It's also, given the level of specification and quality, stringent quality requirements in that market, it's a high value add market. So if we look at other segments like automotive, it's either commoditized from the outset or rapidly becomes commoditized because of the volume and the price points. Whereas in aerospace, there's a much greater scope for value add, and therefore it's a segment that is more attractive to an Australian-based company like ourselves, and it's also where our core strengths lie right now. So heavy aerospace focus going forward, but we do have exposure to other growth markets. Automotive, we have some development activity where we're demonstrating to a European sports car OEM later this month, a very novel manufacturing process, and we do produce parts for a medical devices company, another Australian ASX-listed company, MicroX, down at our Geelong facility. So it's not exclusively aerospace, but that's where the real prize is, and that's where our core capabilities lie.
So a pretty sort of exciting outlook in terms of the opportunity across the suite of markets for Quickstep, by the sounds of it. Absolutely.
Unfortunately, in the space that we operate in, the domestic market is very small. It will always be very small. 95% of our output is exported. I expect that percentage to hold pretty steady as we grow from 52 million in revenue last year to probably 90 to 100 million 3 years from now. It will be largely for the export market. And what's important in a segment like ours and for a company of our size, we absolutely have to extend our global reach. We have to find our niche, which I believe we have found in aerospace, and be relentless in the pursuit of that. And we can ensure that we secure a reasonable market share in the segments that we're going after.
Yeah, well, very exciting times. Mark Burgess, again, appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mark Burgess, CEO at Quickstep. Well, moving on, and just when you thought fast but healthy food couldn't get much faster, retail giant Amazon wants to transform the ready-to-eat meal space with an array of disruptive technologies.
This frittata might not whet your appetite, but it's Amazon's latest foray into the food industry, as the online shopping giant explores new technologies to bring ready-to-eat meals to its customers that are more nutritious than processed foods and have a longer shelf life. Amazon is looking into selling food made with microwave-assisted thermal sterilization technology, or MATS for short, which involves placing food in hot, pressurized water and cooking it with microwaves for several minutes. Reuters correspondent Jeffrey
Amazon is evaluating this new food technology that promises food that's stable on a shelf for a year. You don't have to refrigerate it, but it is much more nutritious and tastes much better than conventionally processed food.
Technology grew out of interest from the U.S. military more than a decade ago to improve the quality of MREs for soldiers in combat.